How was your summer vacation? We're back with it's the Pick Six podcast. We never really went anywhere. I'm Evan Bland with Sam McKewon and Tom Shatel with the World-Herald, and that's kind of the vibes that we're getting out of Nebraska camp here. We had a media day this week. Nebraska football in earnest, beginning its training camp, and now we're rolling. We're on the month-long countdown to the season, and I kind of got those vibes, guys, where we're getting back together with some friends, and it kind of felt that way with maybe not Matt Rule, who we talked with in media days a week earlier, but certainly coordinators, players. How does it feel that football season's on this countdown? We're gonna have some games here in about a month.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't. I get a different vibe on that, and maybe to me it used to be you didn't really write much about football all summer. You didn't see anybody, you didn't hear from anybody, um, and there was kind of like a Skywriters tour in late August, and the camp opened up. But I feel like we've been writing about him all summer. We saw Rule in June. I just it didn't seem like it was. I mean, it was obviously a big deal yesterday, and we hadn't seen Satterfield or White, I guess. But I just seem like, well, it's just like, to me, college football now is you just one continuous train that gets rolls all 12 months, uh, whether it's NIL or portal or um, news or I don't know. It didn't seem like it was, it used to be sort of like you said, a back to school feeling. It doesn't seem like that to me anymore. But maybe I'm wrong.
No, I feel the same way as Tom does. When I was in college, it was still sort of the pre-internet era, and practice would open and there might be 10, 12 people around, and it was just, yeah, it was just different. It was not it was pretty low key. The part that felt somewhat similar was the player portion, where it did feel like, 25 years ago, you could talk to a player for 15 minutes. There weren't necessarily seven reporters around, but you did have an opportunity to maybe chat with people. I remember that they'd always name sort of the captains early in the year, and they'd have a day when the captains all talked. But yeah, yesterday was an extravaganza, Evan, and it's interesting. It was an extravaganza for a program that hasn't made a bowl in 7 seasons and was 5-7 last season. And I do think they're going to make a bowl this year, but it was notable. I think Matt Rule is trying very hard and Tom wrote about this, to create a program that operates like a top performing program on the field. He wants to get the program to that place off the field before they get there in the results. And so if you look at the way that the staff is constructed, you look at the amount of people that are in the program, you look at the size of the roster, you look at the media approach that was taken yesterday. I think Matt Rule's saying we're going to be a large scale program with a lot of people around, and our players have to get used to the attention. And it's interesting because, again, the results haven't come yet. And there's some coaches that be like, hey, I'll make all my guys available when we win. I think Matt Rule is trying to create a culture of winning that then eventually wins on the field. And so that's kind of the thing that I kind of noted yesterday, is it was kind of a big time feel. And I think it's an intriguing approach for a program that has not accomplished a lot on the field.
Hmm. So the place I kind of want to start is from a point that Tom made yesterday too. It's this idea that, like, okay, and Nebraska players said this pretty much to a man, that they felt like they've done everything they could this summer to put themselves in position to win games and succeed. And
Right.
now they feel confident about going out and doing that. But the fact of the matter is, they didn't win a one-score game last year. That's been a bane of this program's existence for a number of years. You have to go out and do it on Saturday. So, like, how does that happen? Is this like, are you guys expecting all the off-season work and turnover and talent upgrade to lead immediately to success in these one-score areas, or is there still going to be, do you anticipate a learning curve that will continue to happen in trying to win these one-score games that really very few players on this roster have any experience doing?
Yeah, there's two kinds of confidence. One is the confidence of doing the work and all the stuff you need to do, to make sure that you're prepared. And there's a confidence of actually going out and doing it. And I feel like they sound like they've done everything, the first part. And they just gonna go out, and we're gonna be writing about this for a month. And and at some point, we quote what they say, and people start to get mad at us for well, you're hyping up the team, you're overhyping them. And no, we're just in August, everybody's confident. Everybody thinks they're gonna win. And we just have to wait until August 31st to see if they can. And I feel better about it this year because they're starting at home. And they haven't started at home. They've started 0-1 like 4 or 5 years in a row. And there's a lot to be said for that. A lot to be said for starting 1-0. And I also think, yeah, the turnovers, the playmaking, how do you get beyond that? I believe talent uh, equals winning in college football. The more speed you have, the bigger you are, the better players you have. I also believe that the great players don't turn it over. Doesn't mean they never turn it over, but the great ones um, don't make mistakes. They some guys are winners, and they I think there's a chance that there are more of those kind of guys on the roster now, starting with the quarterback, who will not be perfect, but he didn't have to be. He just has to make plays and keep him out of danger. So, yeah, I think there's every reason to believe they're going to be better and they're going to go to a bowl, but that kind of confidence comes from doing it, and that'll start August 31st. You win one, maybe you can win two, then you can win three. And winning becomes a habit. Making plays becomes a habit. Holding on to the ball becomes a habit. The more you win, the more you want to win. You want that feeling every week. So they got to get back on that train. And to me, that's what this season's all about.
Yeah, Evan, pursuant to the one score discussion, we're not going to make this list, but we could make a list of the top 5 games that Nebraska football had no business losing by one score. In fact, they should have won by 10 or more over the last 6 years. And I mean, I can think of them right off the top of my head. Northwestern 2018, Colorado 2019, 2021. There were multiple games that Nebraska should have won. In 2022, Northwestern. They should have won that game in Ireland by more than 10 points. They should have beaten Wisconsin last year by more than 10 points, or up 14-0, and have a chance to go up 21-0. And there's just so many opportunities in there where part of what has happened with Nebraska football isn't that they're just losing the games at the end. They're finding ways to make those games one-score games when they don't have to be. And so I think one of the things that Rule has focused on is just creating sort of a day-to-day, hour-to-hour consistency that creates a culture of discipline from kickoff all the way to the final gun. And yeah, I thought they made some strides there last year, particularly on the defense. There weren't a lot of plays defensively last year. We were like, what in the hell was that? Like in the third or fourth quarter where like they completely busted. That's encouraging. But then I think there were some other discouraging things with the offense. The offense was so far behind the chains and so far behind in terms of playmakers. There's reasons for that, right? They had all kinds of injuries. They weren't deep to begin with, and then they got hurt at positions where they weren't deep. But simultaneously, I thought the game management at times was just a little bit off. And so I think they've probably worked through those things in the offseason. Marcus Satterfield yesterday is like, if you turn the ball over, you're not going to play. And I thought the way he emphasized that was notable. And we'll see if that bears out in lineup changes when guys make mistakes or things like that. But I think generally speaking, the one score stuff it's real. But Matt Rule also said it's not voodoo stuff. Like you can create a game where you win. It's a good game, but you win by 10 or you win by 7 and you control the football game. I thought Nebraska football's control of games over the last 7 years wasn't very good. There's just too many circumstances where Nebraska seemed like it was going to put a team away and then shot itself in the foot. And those are probably areas where Nebraska's got to grow the fastest. The challenge with doing that is they have to be able to do it with a lot of new pieces on offense at the skill positions or guys that have not proven they can do it at the skill positions. And then they have a freshman quarterback. They have to do it with a freshman, and that's not going to be easy. As good as he is.
No doubt. We're going to get to the quarterbacks in a minute, but leaving them out of it, what did you guys take away from the media day extravaganza? We talked to 12 players, 3 coordinators, Matt Rule. What was something maybe that piqued your interest or something that you're going to be following other than quarterbacks as camp plays out in the next few weeks?
Everything. I mean, really, there's so much to look at. Stuff like Thomas Fedoni, maybe the guys, the new kids, the Ainsworth kid. What positions are they going to come up with? I mean, Fedoni was talking about it yesterday. It's just that kind of stuff. Offensive line to me is a big part of this. But there's so much, Evan. All of a sudden, kicker is an issue, right? And
Yeah.
the guy who kind of had a slump is now injured, or something. So he's not on the roster, Alvano. So how's that going to work? There's a lot of pieces. A lot to look at this August. The secondary, John Butler. The defensive line seems to have a lot of depth. All eyes will be on the quarterback, but I think the offensive line just and they're not going to really do anything in August. Nobody will, but we'll sit back and watch and see what kind of lineup they put together. But I don't know. The vibe I got yesterday was sort of a quiet confidence. But to me, the story, probably if there's one story, and I might write about this for Sunday, is Dylan Raiola. How much respect can he get as a freshman? How much can he earn? And how much of a leader is he going to be? Because a guy like that can set the vibe for the whole team. He can set the bar. I've seen it over the years, and every freshman quarterback I've covered has all been different. But a guy like that, if he has the it factor, can raise the bar by himself and the expectation of the day to day, not turning it over, making the plays, the no excuses, showing up every day, doing the extra work. So I guess that's I just said what I should have said at the beginning. I kind of buried the lead, but I really think that Raiola as the leader and setting the vibe and what kind of respect he gets from the older guys is I think something to watch.
I'll give you 3 things, Evan. The first one is that I asked Marcus Satterfield and Tony White if they had respectively the most experienced offensive and defensive lines before like this, and both of them said never. These are the most experienced offensive and defensive lines that they've ever had. The upshot is this: you need to be good when you have that. If you have that level of expertise and depth at those positions, generally speaking, that bodes well for your success, because part of running the football and then protecting the passer and then stopping the run and getting after the passer is the quality of depth and expertise you have on those lines. Nebraska says they have it. 2, the skill position battles are going to be interesting. I think there's enough depth now and there's enough players there that there's going to be some guys that are left out, frankly, in the cold. Guys that are on the third team, third string, they might get some opportunities in camp, but they can probably see the writing on the wall, and they're going to say things like, hey, why am I not with the first team? What's going on here? Nebraska went out and signed 2 senior wide receivers for a reason. They are not going to go into a year again where they feel like they're caught short without depth. And so I think that skill position battle is going to be interesting. After 2 weeks, who's going to be where and how's that all going to look, I think is important. And then I think, yeah, the third thing is related to Raiola is how do you create, just some jump start and passing the football without having to set up an elaborate play action pass. So I'm going to be listening for, how are they in the quick game? How are they throwing the ball, 4 to 6 yards? How do you get your quarterback going and moving the chains? I think that Dylan Raiola is going to be able to do the splash stuff. He's going to be able to throw on the run 45 yards across his body and hit somebody. He's going to be able to throw that go route, 70 yards up the field. He can do those things. But you know what? When Adrian Martinez was a freshman, he did those things too. The thing where Adrian didn't grow is he didn't get great with the managing the stuff under 10 yards, just pitching and catching. And I think that's an area where Nebraska's got to get Raiola started early and get him rolling. If they're able to do that, I think they're going to be in good shape. But the vibes I got yesterday was everybody likes Raiola, skill position battles, and then that offensive and defensive line. Those guys, the confidence of those guys comes in the Hawk Center before they get there. And I was struck by the amount of confidence all those guys had.
The one I would add in addition to all of those would be how linebacker plays out. Like you look at the defense and what it has back, and you're talking known major contributors at every level except linebacker. And when I heard John Bullock speak, in his second year transitioning from a safety to a linebacker, I think there could be a big season in store for him. You look at Javen Wright, and he detailed all the injuries that he's been through in the last couple of years. He looked good, excited, ready to go. Mekhi Bayer, that's a position that I'll be curious to see how it goes. I think Nebraska wants to rotate more than those 3 through that spot. So how does that position sort of reset? That's the heart of a defense. What can that look like? Kind of who emerges in the next few weeks will be fascinating for me there. Okay, so quarterback. Tom, you touched on Raiola a little bit. The hype continues to swell. I mean, even just here on a Wednesday afternoon, Adam Schefter's tweeting out pictures of Dylan Raiola wheeling his luggage to Selleck Hall next to a picture of Patrick Mahomes, wearing the same sunglasses, kind of the same look, hairstyle, that sort of thing. The hype's picking up. We're into August here, essentially. I think people for a long time have thought it's a foregone conclusion that Raiola is going to be the guy, but Nebraska has not taken the bait on that pretty much to a man. When it's Matt Rules, Marcus Satterfield, the players, they go out of their way to include everybody else in the competition. Heinrich Harburg, Daniel Kalen, Jalen Gramstad now is entering the conversation. Quarterbacks talk Friday. What are you guys looking to hear from those guys that can, I don't know, affect what your perception is? And maybe how soon will it be until Nebraska names its starter for the season?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just gonna go listen. I don't have any. I don't need to hear anything. I mean, they haven't done anything all summer. They've worked out. I mean, there's ever since the spring game, there's really nothing new. So, like I just said, what kind of a leader has Raiola been all the summer, and what kind of respect is he going to get? And I think he's, judging from what we heard yesterday, there's a lot of respect there. So, but that's I got the I don't know if we need to hear he's the quarterback or not. We'll probably hear that from the coach probably the Monday before the opener, maybe the week before that. But it's not necessary that you don't need to name anybody now. Let them play. Let them scrimmage. Let's see who's, maybe Kalen steps up. I don't know. I mean, we all think it'll be Raiola, but yeah, there's no hurry to name anybody, and we're right about them all anyway.
Yeah, I think Raiola is, obviously people are interested in what he did in the offseason and how he's sort of led some of the offensive linemen, taking them out for pizza, things like that. He's trying to carry himself as a leader at a very young age, and certainly his role model is Patrick Mahomes, and that's not a secret. Based on the way he plays, based on the way he looks, in terms of the sunglasses and just the whole look. I think Patrick Mahomes is a good role model. I do, like, for what Dylan Raiola wants to do. Mahomes is a team guy. He has fun. He's not overly serious or pretentious. And so I think Dylan's picked somebody who, you can actually model a little bit. Now he's a little bit freewheeling. And Mahomes has a unique skill set that allows him to do some things that very few quarterbacks in my own lifetime that I've been watching on TV has ever been able to do. Maybe John Elway, but not too many. I don't know if Dylan can do all those things. And I also think that it's important that, Raiola is really good with the fundamentals. So, some of what Nebraska is going to ask him to do, again, is just hit a 7-yard out. Is he going to be able to do the things that make us go, wow? Yes. It's important, though, that he's able to do some of those other components, and do some of the stuff that's just pitching and catching and showing up. I don't know if we're going to talk to Jalen Gramstad or not, but man, I think he's actually a really interesting story in camp, because there's a chance he could be your number 2 quarterback. I mean, you did not bring him here to be number 4. There'd be no reason, because that kid could go back to where he's at and play for a national championship, or go walk on at Iowa, and Iowa's a lot less settled, and they are. Iowa's not settled. I mean, Cade McNamara, nobody knows exactly how he's going to come back. And so Gramstad probably could have done that. He's coming here, I think, with the opportunity to maybe be a backup. If he can be the backup, if he can be Andrew Bunch, then Heinrich Haarberg can do more things for you. Heinrich Haarberg, was he on the list every single week of the elite list, Evan?
Not every week, about half.
Half. He is but yesterday Matt Rule said he's an NFL Madden Build-A player, and that's actually true. He's 6'5" and he's 240 or whatever he is. This is a guy that you can put at a tight end, or this kid can run. If he had played tight end his entire career, I think we would be speaking about him in the same breath as a Thomas Fidone. And yeah, I know how good Fidone is, but I think Haarberg actually has that athletic ability. And so if there's an opportunity to get Haarberg on the field as a mismatch, does Gramstad's development give you a chance to do that? Are they going to talk about that tomorrow? Probably not. But, Glenn Thomas is going to talk about Haarberg's development. I know it's a little bit of a sensitive situation, because Haarberg's the guy that won him 5 games last year. But simultaneously, this is not a guy that you necessarily want to keep on the sidelines. How do you get him a role? Is it as a wildcat quarterback? Is it as a tight end? So Raiola's, it's always going to be interesting when he talks, because he's not bad at it. Like, he's not your typical true freshman who's a deer in the headlights. He's a little bit better and more sophisticated than that. And so I'll be curious to see how he handles it, because it's going to be the first of many interviews he's going to do this season. Let's be honest.
I agree. I think the Haarberg piece, to me, is the most interesting thing that's going to come out of Friday, because you think back to spring ball, I think it was spring ball of 23, when Haarberg spoke on the Memorial Stadium concourse there. And a lot of the talk was about, hey, what do you think about playing H-back or moving positions? And he was
right.
He kind of bristled at the idea. He said, this is my first chance to play quarterback. I don't want to talk about that in so many words.
Nebraska bristled too. They didn't terribly appreciate my questions
No.
about it. I'm the one who asked a lot of those questions, and I was not. I was told that was not terribly appreciated. As it turns out, he's the starting quarterback last season all year.
Right. So how does that change? Because he's going to get those questions on Friday, at least about his willingness to be creative in that way. So is there the same sort of bristling, or is he going to be more open to it because he's kind of gauged the situation and has a sense of things and where he fits in athletically and all the rest? To me, that's the fascinating part. They're not going to declare Raiola the starter on Friday. Like you said, I would imagine, maybe won't hear from Gramstad. Maybe we will. And then, Kalen has flashed, but it feels like he's destined to, have a year to develop for sure. So to me, it's what can you do with Haarberg? Where does he fit into that hierarchy? And is this sort of a Luke McCaffrey situation from a few years ago, where you have a guy who's shown the ability to do other things, but maybe wants to have his shot at quarterback? We'll see kind of where Haarberg's mind is in that sense.
Luke McCaffrey in an NFL training camp as we speak as a receiver.
Right.
And Luke was a harder case than Haarberg for sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, how many Nebraska fans are shaking their heads at that? What McCaffrey could have done in Nebraska as a receiver,
Yeah.
for sure. Any
Will
other
somebody
football
show
topics?
Heinrich Harburg that?
Right. Well, we're going
Okay.
to get to some volleyball talk here in a minute. Anything else you guys want to throw out on the football side? We had media days last week. We got the NIL practice Saturday night. That thing should be interesting. Matt Rule. I thought what Matt Rule said about that was kind of interesting too, guys, where he made a point of saying like the things that have been free for Nebraska fans, like Fan Day, will continue to be that way, but they needed to create some new events to raise money for this thing. I don't know. Do you kind of get the sense that this is a thing with Husker fans? Like, is there some anticipation for this thing, or has it been built up enough, do you think?
Oh, I never know, what they're going to do next. But every time I underestimate Husker fans, they they overextend and they show me that that I shouldn't have underestimated them. So I think that this is a fascinating thing we're seeing Saturday night. Would you pay to watch a practice? A lot of people used to be able to go to scrimmages, just sit in the stands and sun themselves, and watch football. It was wide open on Saturday afternoons in August. Weeks before, heck, the week before the opener, you could walk in the stadium and watch Nebraska, scrimmage with everybody, ones on ones, and so I think people will do this. And if it's a big success, there'll be more, and there may be more during the season. Um, you don't like to have things open during the season, but if they need to raise money, they'll concoct a way to get people in there to watch something. So, um, and you know, I hope Fan Day continues to be free. I hope autographs continue to be free. But we're heading through a day where that won't be free, and there'll be players wanting to charge for their signature. Um, I hope it's different here, but we're kind of opening a door Saturday night that we may not be able to close down the road.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I think we could move toward kind of what Tom's saying, but I think we can move toward an era where that becomes more than a practice. It becomes an exhibition against whoever. I mean, it becomes a glorified scrimmage against Wesleyan or somebody. That the NCAA relaxes its rules where a junior college can come up here and practice against Nebraska. You don't keep score, but it's something like that. I could imagine a volleyball exhibition where University of Nebraska is playing UNK and 5,000 people show up for that. And it doesn't count, but it's an 1890 exclusive or something like that. They pay UNK a little bit of money to show up, but I could see it going even further. I think practice is a good start. We had speculated they get at least 10,000. I don't know. It's going to be awfully damn hot.
Yeah, it is.
So I don't know. Heat affects things. I mean, if they're putting people on the east sideline, you're going to be baking for 3 hours, and so bring water. But I think it's a pretty good idea, and they do this in the NFL training camps. By the way, we were coming back from Indianapolis and we stopped at Chick-fil-A in St. Joe, Missouri, and we stopped there and we see all these kids in 15 jerseys. They're all going up to watch Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that's free. I think you have to pay a little bit of money to get into the practice, but maybe it is free. But people are willing to do that, and so I think Nebraska will continue doing it. It makes sense.
So from one Nebraska sport to the other, volleyball, they're going to have their media days next week, Monday and Tuesday in Chicago. It's an 18-team event now. And it's interesting to talk about this team because it's like the idea of Nebraska volleyball has gotten so much bigger than like talking about the actual volleyball for me to me. When you start talking about Volleyball Day at Nebraska, some of the documentaries that are coming out about things, John Cook and his off-season activities, like there's just so much more to talk about. But Sam, we were on this podcast a year ago, and you were pretty adamant that Nebraska had a Final Four team a squad that could make a run at a national championship. They fall just short. What's your early impression of what this team could be, and maybe what are its strengths? What is it going to hang its hat on?
I could be wrong. I'll start with that. I'll say I could be wrong. I think they could win the national championship, but it's going to be how they adjust and respond to what I suspect will be a couple losses in the first month and a half of the season. I just have a sense that the schedule's a little tougher and the teams are playing maybe a little bit better. Last year they got a great win at Stanford, but it's not that hard to play at Stanford. The crowd isn't as engaged as they're going to face when they face Louisville and Kentucky. I see a loss or two for Nebraska early in the season, and then I see an adjustment coming, and it will either be one of those adjustments that led to a national championship. The year they had 6 losses, right? They had a national title that year, or it's gonna end up just short. But I do think it's probably a 2 or 3 loss season. To me, there's 2 huge stories. The first story is there's been so much focus on Harper Murray because of the stuff that's been happening off the court. The reality is, regardless of what had happened off the court, Harper Murray, who was the best freshman in the Big Ten last year, is now going to be in a position where she is battling for playing time with Lindsey Krause, who's back healthy, who was hurt last year. So Harper became basically their top outside hitter last year. Lindsey's back. And then Taylor Landfair, who is really, really, really good. The All-American from Minnesota has joined the team. Taylor Landfair is not going to take a backseat to anybody. She had a 20-minute interview on Husker Sports Network. It was good. She's serious. She's serious about this. She said she's going to be here for 2 years, and she's legit. And so you got 3 players for 2 spots. And I don't think there's any guarantee that Harper Murray, she's going to have to battle hard to get playing time, because this is Lindsey's last year. And when Lindsey's been healthy, she's been really good. And Taylor Landfair might be the best one of them all. She could be the equivalent of Kelsey Robinson when she joined the team from Tennessee. That's story number 1. I think story number 2 is just how they manage to get even better on defense. And Lexi Rodriguez is there. My understanding, and I could be wrong, is that Olivia Malk has really impressed everybody. And so she could potentially press Laney Choboy for playing time. And this would not be a bad thing. So people remember a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, they had 3 elite defenders. They had the setter, obviously. Then they had Kenzie Knuckles. Then they had Lexi. And then they also had Keonale Akana. So they had 4 elite defenders, the 4th one being the setter. And they were almost unstoppable, like unstoppable. Now, they had to play more defenders in order to make it work. But when Keonale was in there, and then you had Kenzie in there, and then you had Lexi in there, that's the year they went to the national championship game and lost to Wisconsin in 5 sets. So could Olivia become this extra defender where you've got Laney Choboy, you've got Lexi Rodriguez, Bergen Riley is who she is, but then you've got Olivia Malk coming in. It's going to be really interesting. They could have the best defense in the country if she's able to help them, but then you got to take a piece off the offensive court. I think John Cook's got a lot of options. He's going to have to navigate them, and their team chemistry is going to have to change a little bit from last year. That's my thought.
How about you, Tom? Where do you kind of see Nebraska in this new 18-team Big Ten, the season that they're coming off of? What are you expecting to see?
Well, I mean, they've got everything, and the question is, what's the leadership like? It's going to be good. They've got really good seniors. Last year, I mean, this program now is about one thing. It's got all the extra stuff, the documentaries and the football stadiums, but it's got to be about winning the national championship. And last year was a downer. Why? They did everything. They had the ultimate game nobody will forget, the iconic 92,000. They beat Wisconsin #1. They did all these things, and then when it got to the end, it felt like a letdown. I mean, it was a great year, but that's where they are now. They're on the high wire, and if they don't win the national title this year, it's going to be a downer again. So much is expected. This is the most talented team they've ever had, right? I mean, it sure feels like it, and so they have, and as good as they were, and they were great in the semifinal match last December. They couldn't handle Texas's serve, and all of
Right.
a sudden it was over, and it was over quick, and everybody's head's spinning. So, um, there, it's John Cook has this program at an all-time high, and that's saying something for he got four national titles. But that's sort of the life they chose. I mean, you're going to Nebraska, you're expected to win the whole thing. So there's plenty of other good teams out there at that level as well. So it's great. They can't top the way they began last year, but um, they're playing in a national event early. Um, I just, to me, the Harper Murray thing, you've got to be, college kid. They go through things. I've got college kids. They go through things. You have to give her room, and she hopes she grows up quick and moves on. And but how will that affect her on the court? You don't know. Hopefully not. So yeah, that's something everybody will watch. But yeah, there's a lot of competition, and Lindsey Krause, wants to go out in style. So does Lexi. So um, that's kind of how I look at it, Evan. It's we all know what they're going to be. We all know how good they are. We're just getting to the end, and you know, Louisville in December is a nice place to be. And
Mhm.
will they be celebrating? And I feel like that's where the program is right now. It's a good year, but it's not a great year unless you win the whole thing.
Yeah, they're so loaded. I don't think we even mentioned Merritt Beeson's name in that whole breakdown. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And the thing I want to just add to what you're saying, Sam, about the schedule. To me, it's always interesting how Nebraska schedules because they can do it any way they want, really. I mean, everyone wants to play them, and so like you go to Kentucky to start, but then you have kind of a week, 10 days where you can kind of get right a little bit, figure things out. They had the Corpus Christi, TCU, SMU, the Citadel, Montana State. And then at the end of that thing, man, you got Creighton, Arizona State, but then you end it with Stanford and at Louisville before you start Big Ten play. So
And
I
Creighton
think,
might be outside of Louisville. Creighton might be the best team that Nebraska plays in that
oh,
conference.
oh,
This is
Creighton's
the best Creighton
outstanding.
team of all time.
No
This is
doubt.
the one. This is the Final Four team for Creighton. If they're going to do it, this is the year. They've got all the players back, and then they added a Kentucky middle blocker. If there was a year where Creighton was going to beat Nebraska, this is that year. And I think Creighton may well know that. Um, the real tricky part of the schedule, Evan, is late in the year. So they get UCLA and USC at home. And I'm sure people are like, oh, isn't that lucky? Nah, I'm sure they would have rather gone to LA because the crowd's out there. So what they get late in the season is they get this nasty run where they go at Michigan State, at Ohio State. They come home for Illinois and Michigan. That's going to be a very emotional match with Michigan, I'm sure. And then they go at Wisconsin, the big one, at Northwestern. Northwestern's tricky. Then at Oregon, at Washington. And Oregon and Washington will show up. Their fans will show up. And there's a history between Nebraska and Washington. I don't think that
Oh
coach
yeah.
is there anymore, but there's a history. And the fans will show. Those are going to be two really hard matches for Nebraska. The crowd will be there. It'll be tough. And so if this program has 3 or 4 losses at the end of the year, I don't think that has any bearing on whether they can win the national championship. I don't think there's going to be an undefeated team this season. I just don't see it. And Nebraska is as good as anybody. It's going to come down to how they adjust to maybe some misfortune. And it may be, and John Cook would probably never say this, it may not be the worst thing if they lose a couple, because then when they get in a situation like they did in Texas, they'll respond a little bit better. I thought their response against Texas was panic. And I don't think they would panic if they had lost a couple early in the season. They would adjust. So we'll see what happens.
We will see. It's going to be fun. We're just getting started. I mean, we have a month of football camp, volleyball talk. We're getting into this thing. It's 90 degrees out. We're loving life. It's all good. And we'll be back next week to talk a little bit more quarterbacks, and who knows what else may happen here in Huskerland. So for Tom and Sam, I'm Evan. Thanks for listening to the Pick Six Podcast.